Hi, everybody. It's a great conference. I mean, all of these companies are interesting. I think I wanted to join about 4 of them. Anyway, I just want to talk to you a little bit about my history and startups. I've actually worked for 4 startups in my history. And I've also got a long history with Bucharest. I've been coming here for about 12 years. And one of the really cool things about Bucharest, when I first came, I was giving a speech to our team. And I was a typical American. Everything is great. Everything's fantastic. You know, it's super, super duper. And someone took me aside and said, you know, in Romania, good is good. Very good, not quite as good. Super duper, you're hiding something. So I guess my goal tonight is to maybe try to be good, and I'll just stop there. So I'd already worked for a number of years at Hewlett-Packard, including a couple of years at HP Labs, when I joined a 12-person startup. And it was really cool because I was used to a very structured environment as a design engineer. And I showed up the first day and went to one of the lead developers. And I said, great, do you guys have a spec of what you're building? He said, I got a spec right there. I've never read it. I have no idea what's in it. And then he said, why don't you just go to the whiteboard here and tell me what you want. And I'll code it, you test it, and I'll fix it, and we'll go back and forth. It was like early, like agile 1989 style. It was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it. But one of the things you always deal with at startups is bugs. You know, you're trying to get things done quickly. There's a lot of corners cut. You're trying to make it work the best. And we were getting ready to go to a trade show, and probably about 80% of our commands would crash the product. So we said, okay, we're going to this big trade show in Detroit, and whatever you do, don't give a live demo. Show screenshots, talk about the product. No live demo. Everybody got that? No live demo. It's too dangerous. So I'm one of the main demo guys. I'm there at the trade show. Trade show opens at 10. At 10:05, the CEO brings over a vice president of General Motors. And he says, I want you to give him a demo. I said, live demo? He goes, yeah, live demo. So I had to be very specific about how I sort of worked my way through the demo so I would avoid crashes. Like, you know, well, I know this is a really obvious command, but let me try this really cool one down here and kind of, you know, work my way through. So it's really important that you think about this. You know, in the world of quality, you're always going to have bugs. The question is, how do you mitigate risk? One of the things that happened that I learned early on was if a developer comes to you and says, I've got a safe bug fix. We're going to put it in right at the last minute. It'll be fine. It's safe. We don't need to run through testing again. It's good. So we did one of these right before release, the day before. We didn't have time to do any testing. And it was super safe. And then suddenly the product had slowed down 26.5x that we didn't notice. It went out, our customers found it. It was, you know, really kind of scary. Customer visits, you know, I've done a ton of customer visits over the years, and some of them can be really intense. I started in a new job and a few years ago, and I went to visit our biggest customer. Like 30% of our income came from this customer, and I was introduced as the VP of quality, and the 2 guys started laughing. And I said, oh, so that's really funny. He says, it's hilarious. You've got an impossible job. You know, but when something like that happens, the best thing you can do is to really understand where the customer is coming from, to sit down and say, wow, you know, let's talk about that. Let me hear about not just the problems, but how it affected you. Customers, you know, appreciate if someone is listening for real and taking that input back. We had another customer that the sales guy was warning me that he will yell. I said, okay. He goes, no, he will really yell. And I said, okay, when he yells, what does he say? Let's listen to that, you know. And that turned out, you know, really well. So one of the other things we face a lot out there is when you're hiring people, when you're interviewing, it's really hard to find really good people for the team. Technical, good fit, culture, hardworking, able to grow, etc. And one of my best interviews that I had was when I was switching industries from an engineering software company to a .com. It was a total change for me. I had an interview with the VP of operations, and he said, okay, I'm going to go to the whiteboard here. I'm going to write down these different areas of technology that we deal with, and I want you to tell me, are you a mechanic? You can take apart that technology, rebuild it, make it work? Or are you a driver? You really know how to use it inside and out? Or are you a passenger? So he started writing down like networking, storage, web coding, all these things. And he wrote down 10 areas, and I was like, passenger, 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 passenger. And finally got to the last one. I said, I'm a passenger, but I could probably tell the driver where to go. And I came out of that, and I thought, boy, I totally blew that interview. And a friend of mine was a VP of engineering. I went to him, I said, I just blew this interview with this guy. And he said, I don't know, I'll go check with him, but I think you're okay. And he came back, he said, no, you're fine. This guy's whole thing was that he wanted you to be honest. And he said if you lied about anything, he could keep drilling down until he caught you. And then he had a habit of walking you out the door. And I discovered that later when I worked there. I had one time one of my interview candidates, and I was looking for him. I couldn't find him. And I finally found out that he had interviewed with this guy. He had given some answer where he lied a little bit, and the guy had walked him out the door. And the interview candidate was like, I should check with Walker. I should see if I should stay. He goes, no, he doesn't want you. Go home. Never come back. Don't call us. So I had to really watch it with that. One of the other areas that's really important is that I think when we join startups, we think about all the excitement, we think about the good times, the cheers, the making it big, the making tons of money, and there's always a lot of tough times as well. And the first time that I was at a startup and we had missed some revenue that we were really counting on, our investors delayed investment, we had to do a layoff. And it really just kind of took the energy out of things. But what I learned along the way is that some of my times of greatest growth were when they were tough times, when something went wrong, when the demo failed in front of someone, when you didn't get this customer, when you had to lay off someone, when you had to go through really tough times. And we really saw that during the dot-com boom and bust, where it was a lot of pain when you were hiring people. When you're trying to hire like 100 people in 1 month and get good people, it was hard. Hitting the milestones were hard. And then when things busted and you started having to lay people off, it was really tough. I had this great team. I was managing the QA team, the support team, and a few other teams. And when we started doing layoffs after each board meeting, my support team kept teasing me. So at the time of the board meeting, they'd pack up all of their stuff, like 30 people. They'd pack it up in boxes and be waiting. And they'd wait to see if I was going to nod the wrong way or something to them. And then I'd say, put your stuff away, go back to work. And then the next time and the next time. And eventually, that startup went under, and I had to bring them all into one room and lay them all off together. But the way we handle the tough times and what we learn from it, really helps a lot. Some of the cool quality metrics that I've seen before, one of the best ones for customer metrics is we went to a big customer once, and we were trying to understand how do we tell whether we succeeded with our product. This is a large carrier. They've got a managed service environment, and they are managing it for large enterprise customers. And his job was to run the operations, and he would have a meeting once a month with each of his top 20 customers. And he would say these meetings usually didn't go well. And after we got to know him, he said, my metric is, right now I have so many minutes per meeting of yelling, where the customer is yelling at me. So I got like 15 minutes of yelling per meeting on average. And if you can reduce that by 1/3 to 10 minutes of people yelling at me each time, that will be worth $1 million to me. And it was so cool to really understand, exactly what he was going through and what was really important to him. When interviewing QA guys, we used to have this test called the Kobayashi Maru test. And who watches Star Trek? Who knows Kobayashi Maru? Wow, hardly any Star Trek fans. Okay, so anyway, for QA engineers, we used to put them, especially leaders, under this test where we would set up a theoretical situation for them. The release is behind. You have to do so much testing, and you only have 1/3 of the time. And then we would say, how are you going to get it done? And they would throw out ideas like automation, trimming quarters, doing diagonal testing. And no matter what they would suggest, it wasn't enough. So we went pushing them to see what they would do. You want them to come up with a lot of ideas. In the end, at some point, you want them to say, can't do it. 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 3. If they don't come up with any ideas, you don't want them. If they won't admit that it can happen at some point, you don't really want them. You want kind of in between sweet spot. So that went really well. So we were doing something similar to this. One of my managers was interviewing someone, and the guy just wasn't really handling it very well. And he said, "Okay, you have to decide this. You have to make the decision. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And the guy said, "I don't know. I can't do anything. I'm paralyzed." He goes, "Okay, there's a gun to your head. What are you going to do? You make the decision." And the interview candidate said, "Okay, I pick up the gun and I shoot myself." And we said, "Okay, that guy probably won't work in a startup environment." So, one of the other areas that I really enjoyed about startups is the freedom. I've worked in big companies like HP, I've worked in enterprise software companies, I've worked in several startups, and I really love the freedom for a few smart people to build a relationship and trust each other and really make things happen. And one of these times was we were trying to get out a release, and we promised the CEO that we'd get it out by a specific date. And there were lots of bugs, there were lots of problems. So the night before the deadline, myself and our lead developer, we went into the training room, and we got this idea that we could debug much faster if we had several computers. So I would bring up a bug in the debugger on one machine with 20 machines. He would come along and start debugging it, do a patch, start a build. We'd go to the next one, and next one, and next one. We just kind of rotated through for about 18 hours. And we fixed like 100 bugs in one night. But along the way, because it's just us, there was no product managers, there's nobody else around, we would just make decisions. So we'd run into a bug that was difficult, and it would turn out that this is a mechanical optimization software. And we would just sort of say, well, if we don't fix that bug, then we're gonna have to write off the bicycle market. We won't be able to design bicycles. And we look at each other and go, do we care about the bicycle market? I don't care about the bicycle market. Okay, boom, that bug's, we're not gonna fix it. And we were making all these decisions that were affecting the product. There was no rules, nobody around. And we had a great relationship. We had an agreement, unspoken, that I could ask him for any feature at any time, and he would just try to do it. And if he asked me to not fix something at any time, I would give him a pass. And you would just know that you weren't really gonna abuse that. So after this all-nighter, one of my first all-nighters actually, the next day the CEO comes in, and we're kind of feeling a little sorry for ourselves that we've been working really hard for weeks, 7 days a week and all night, and we wanted someone to appreciate all of our suffering. And he came in and he said, actually, he said, these are the good old days. He said, you're gonna look back in a few years and say, these are like the best times. And we looked at him and we said, you're crazy, this isn't really gonna happen. And then a few years later, we were acquired, and the CEO was leaving and moving on, and we actually went to him and said he was like exactly right. And that's the kind of feeling you get. I think that's kind of the drug you get from working at a startup, is that sort of sense of being able to conquer anything and do anything. We had t-shirts that one startup made where we just had the name of the product, and it said like an insanely great product. And we sort of feel like, the only answer if someone asks you who's your competition, your startup, is we have no competition. We only have people who try, and that kind of confidence is really important. And one time I remember we got feedback from another startup that was trying to build a completely different product, and they said, your GUI is really great, it's so intuitive. We'd taken something that takes like weeks to learn, and our product's in an hour or so you could learn how to use it really well. And he said, I want to know the secret. What's your secret sauce of your GUI design, your architecture, whatever. And my boss actually said, the secret is arguing. He said, there's nothing special. It's the fact that we have a lot of really smart, passionate people that will argue passionately about and things that are important until we get to the right answer. And I think that's kind of the environment you want to be in. So let's see, I'm actually going much faster than I thought I would here. Customer visits in general can be really challenging because you have a lot of expectations that aren't really there. So one time I was flying into Antwerp to meet with a big customer, and the sales guy told me, he said, this is just a meet and greet. A meet and greet means there's no expectations. You go in, you shake their hand, you say, hi, how's your project going? You have any questions, this and that. So, okay, so I said, so no prep, nothing, nope, just meet and greet. So I go in and sit down with this guy, and he says, great, I can't believe you're finally here to present your solution to the project proposal that we sent you weeks ago. You're really, really late, but since you're finally here, I'll let you present your proposal, assuming you're ready. And I look at the sales guy, and he won't make eye contact. He's just like looking at his BlackBerry, and he won't, whatever. And I'm thinking, holy cow, what do I do? So in front of the customer, I sort of said, actually, I just have a few more questions about the project, so maybe we can dig in. So you start sort of asking some questions and understanding what's there, give them some ideas, and then hopefully you buy enough time to be able to figure out, what's going on. So I guess in conclusion, what I would say, first of all, I love startups. I've been working at IXIA, which is kind of like a collection of startups that we built the company over the years. And but I just love the energy and enthusiasm and creativity. But the most important thing for me in these various areas is to find a team that you trust, that you work hard, that will challenge you, that will argue with you, that really will go the extra mile when you're working really hard. And I've worked at some startups where I've worked 150-hour weeks, 23 hours a day, 1 hour in a sleeping bag, stuff like that. But who are the people around you, if it's good times or bad times, are the people you want there? Who would you trust if they asked you for your car keys and your wallet with no questions asked, without anything else like that? And that's kind of the environment to be in. So that's what I really wish for all of you. Thank you.
I was wondering if we can take maybe some questions from the audience, if that's okay with you. So I'll give you this mic, and I take another one.
Okay, great. You guys
so, do we
go
have
ahead.
any questions? We have one question here. So I will need a mic. Maybe I can. Oh, okay.
I talk with a lot of startups every week, and many of them have the same issue, which is happiness, of building something cool, then they get not rejected all the time, and they don't know how to overcome and be happy again, because they just see all these barriers. I don't know if you've been on that situation of not being happy and keep pushing it to maybe later on see happiness.
Okay, really good question. So I think the one thing is, it is like a drug, and you got to be careful of that. I remember one time at the .com, there was a project we were supposed to take 6 months, and if we didn't get it done in 6 weeks, the company would go under. So, like 3 in the morning, having 100 people and keeping them motivated, and on all the chaos, I just stood on the table and absorbed it. It was like a cool happiness thing. But what's really important is to get people to focus on, there's sort of like short-term happiness and long-term happiness, and being successful and building something that other people actually use and it expands is worth it, and that takes a mix of experiences. It takes some super fun sort of stuff, it takes some hard work, it takes some ups and downs, and getting people to ride that is difficult. I mean, I remember times that certain developers had working for me that, when you get off the high, they would go low, and it was hard. So I think you just kind of have to convince people of the big picture and the staying power, and that we're going to get there and we're going to make it. And everything isn't always sunshine and puppies, to kind of get there. It's a good question.
Any other questions? I don't see you really good from here, so please raise your hand. Paul.
Okay, sure.
The mic, here. Where is the mic?
Thanks for your presentation. It was really interesting listening to, obviously, a lot of experience in different eras. You talked about like late 1980s, in this country, in the late 1980s. Well, I think most of the people in this room weren't even born yet. But, you wouldn't have thought that you'd be standing in Bucharest talking to a tech community about your experiences.
Right.
Can you talk specifically about what you've seen over the last 12 years? What's evolved? What sticks out to you the most as that makes this a really exciting place to be?
Okay.
And how is this, how is How to Web kind of, for you, does that represent the epitome of that evolution?
Okay. Yeah, first of all, it's the first time I've gone to the How to Web, even though I've been coming here for 12 years. But it's fantastic. Like, even if I'm not speaking, I want to come every year. Because the companies just I've seen in the last couple hours are amazing. I would have probably never in my life come to Bucharest if it wasn't work-related, But about 12 years ago, we purchased a startup that was based here. And so I started coming here. And my first impression was amazing. It was like, I remember one of the first meetings I was sitting in, and suddenly this sort of debate broke out in Romanian. And I really love the fact that people speak Romanian just like not even worried about other people. It's great. They feel very comfortable. But it was very passionate and stuff like that. And I finally asked, like, oh my God, what are they arguing about? And it said, they were talking about where to go for lunch. And I said, I love that people. And also what I've really seen that's consistent is the confidence here. We've got a lot of people. We've got a great internship program over at IXIA. We've hired most of those into the company. And I remember once when I was leading the QA team, I had 180 people worldwide, and it had 35 years experience. And one of my guys that was just out of school, been working for us for like 3 months, and he'd taken on like learning new protocols, stuff like that. And he came up to me and he goes, what does it take to do your job? And I think that day I said, you can have my job today. But that confidence is there. What I've seen is the maturing of the technology here and gaining the footing, because I think the raw ambition and intelligence and sense of humor and openness, I always know that I'm going to hear the way things are. That's always been there, but I think there's been a lot more confidence building and development, and I'm really not as aware as I should be of the whole technology market, except when someone tries to steal one of our people. But it's really great, and it's really encouraging. And I've been here like 40, 50 times, so I really like it.
Walker, thank you so much for being in Romania, joining How to Web conference and sharing your experience with us. Thank you so much.